The morning sun cast long shadows across the government palace in Ouagadougou as President Ibrahim Traore prepared for what would become the most consequential day in Burkina Faso's modern history. The young leader had no idea that the file sitting on his mahogany desk would ignite a revolution that would shake the very foundations of international finance. 3 weeks earlier, Traore had established a special audit commission within the Ministry of Finance. Led by Professor Amadou Sawadogo, a team of brilliant young technocrats began what they thought would be a routine examination of the country's international agreements. What they uncovered was nothing short of systematic economic warfare. "Mr. President," Professor Sawadogo had said, his voice trembling as he entered the presidential office that fateful morning, "what we've discovered will change everything. Burkina Faso has been the victim of the most sophisticated financial fraud in African history." The documents spread across Traore's desk told a story of breathtaking exploitation. Since 1960, Burkina Faso had paid 15 times the principal amount in interest to the World Bank. Roads that existed only on paper, hospitals that were never built, schools that remained phantom projects, while real money flowed into foreign accounts. Traore's jaw tightened as he read each damning detail. The most shocking revelation came in a secret protocol signed in 2019. His predecessor had pledged 40% of the nation's gold reserves as collateral to the World Bank, a deal hidden from Parliament and the people. "Look at this," Traore said, his voice rising with anger as he held up a bank statement. "They claim we owe $4 billion, but we've already paid them $23 billion. This isn't debt, this is organized theft." The evidence was overwhelming. Secret agreements between World Bank representatives and former leaders, commission receipts showing systematic bribery, documents revealing how media organizations were manipulated to silence opposition voices. Each page painted a picture of a continent held hostage by financial predators. Professor Sawadogo had spent sleepless nights verifying every document. "Mr. President," he explained, "this isn't accidental. The patterns are too consistent, too methodical. This is deliberate economic colonization designed to keep us permanently dependent." Traore stood and walked to the window overlooking the capital city. Below, ordinary Burkinabés went about their daily lives, unaware that their president was about to declare war on one of the world's most powerful institutions. The weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders. "Professor," he said without turning around, "how many other African countries are trapped in similar schemes?" "Based on the patterns we've identified, sir, virtually all of them. The World Bank has perfected a system of perpetual debt that makes escape nearly impossible. Until now." The young president turned back to face his advisor. At just 34 years old, Traore had already proven himself as a leader unafraid of challenging the status quo. But this was different. This was taking on an institution that had operated with impunity for decades. "Get me James Morrison on the phone," Traore commanded. "The West Africa Regional Director needs to explain himself." As Professor Sawadogo reached for the phone, Traore felt the gravity of the moment. He thought of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader who had dared to challenge foreign exploitation before being assassinated. He thought of his grandfather, who had fought against colonial rule. He thought of the children in his country who deserved better than a future mortgage to foreign creditors. "Sir," came the voice from the other end of the line. "Mr. Morrison's office says he's unavailable for calls today." Traore's eyes flashed with determination. "Then tell Mr. Morrison he has 2 hours to present himself at this palace, or I'll have him collected by security forces. And Professor—" "Yes, Mr. President. Prepare copies of every document, every piece of evidence. The world needs to see what we've uncovered." As the palace staff scrambled to execute the president's orders, Traore returned to the files. Each page reinforced his growing conviction that this moment would define not just his presidency, but the future of African independence. The young leader understood that he was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. The morning of reckoning had begun. Within hours, James Morrison would walk into a trap 50 years in the making. The documents on Traore's desk weren't just evidence of financial crimes. They were the ammunition needed to fire the first shot in Africa's Second War of Independence. Outside the palace walls, the people of Burkina Faso continued their daily routines, unaware that their young president was about to make a decision that would echo across continents and inspire oppressed peoples everywhere. The game was about to change forever. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over Ouagadougou as James Morrison's convoy approached the presidential palace. The World Bank's West Africa regional director had received many summons from African leaders over his career. But something felt different about this one. The urgency in the palace's tone, the refusal to discuss matters over the phone, it all suggested trouble. Morrison straightened his tie as his black SUV passed through the palace gates. As a veteran of international finance with 20 years of experience managing World Bank operations across Africa, he had weathered many storms. African presidents occasionally made noise about debt relief or questioned loan terms, but they always fell in line eventually. The system was too powerful, too entrenched for any single leader to challenge. "Sir?" his aide whispered as they exited the vehicle. "The security presence seems unusually heavy today." Morrison glanced around, noting the increased number of guards and the serious expressions on their faces. Still, he maintained his composure. He had diplomatic immunity, the backing of the world's most powerful financial institution, and decades of experience managing difficult African leaders. Palace guards escorted Morrison and his 5-person delegation through marble corridors lined with portraits of Burkina Faso's heroes. The silence was unsettling. Usually these meetings began with pleasantries, photo opportunities, and diplomatic small talk. Today, they were led directly to a conference room where President Traore waited, standing behind a table covered with documents. The young president's expression was unlike anything Morrison had encountered before. This wasn't the usual deference he expected from African leaders. Traore's eyes burned with a cold fury that made Morrison unconsciously step back. "Mr. Morrison," Traore began, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Thank you for accepting my invitation. Please sit down. We have much to discuss." Morrison took his seat, attempting to project confidence while his mind raced. The documents on the table appeared extensive, organized with the precision of a prosecutor preparing for trial. This wasn't good. "Before we begin," Traore continued, "I want you to understand that this conversation is being recorded. For historical purposes, you understand." The World Bank director felt his first flash of genuine concern. "Mr. President, I hope we can resolve whatever concerns you may have through normal diplomatic channels. The World Bank has always maintained excellent relations with Burkina Faso." Traore's laugh was bitter and cold. He picked up the first document and slammed it on the table in front of Morrison. "Excellent relations. Is that what you call systematic theft, Mr. Morrison?" Morrison leaned forward to examine the document, and his blood ran cold. It was a secret protocol from 2019, one that was supposed to remain classified indefinitely. How had they obtained this? "Since 1960, Traore's voice rose with each word. "Burkina Faso has paid you $23 billion. Our supposed debt is $4 billion. Can you explain this mathematics to me, Mr. Morrison?" The World Bank director felt sweat forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Mr. President, international finance is complex. Interest rates, administrative fees, currency fluctuations." "Stop." Traore's command silenced Morrison mid-sentence. "Don't insult my intelligence with technical jargon. This document shows that most of your loans were for phantom projects, roads that were never built, hospitals that exist only on paper, schools that our children have never seen." Morrison tried to maintain his composure, but the evidence spread before him was damning. Secret protocols, bribery receipts, correspondence detailing how African leaders were bought and controlled. It was all there. Furthermore, Traore continued, lifting another document. This shows that 40% of our gold reserves were pledged as collateral without parliamentary approval. This isn't just financial misconduct, Mr. Morrison. This is economic warfare. The young president stood and began pacing, his anger building with each step. For 50 years, your institution has perfected a system of perpetual debt designed to keep Africa permanently subjugated. You've turned our natural resources into collateral for phantom development that enriches only you. Morrison attempted damage control. Mr. President, I'm sure there are misunderstandings that can be clarified. Perhaps we could arrange a debt restructuring agreement. I don't want restructuring. Traore's voice thundered through the room. I want cancellation. I want the return of the $23 billion you've stolen from my people. The World Bank director finally understood the gravity of his situation. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an ultimatum. Mr. President, the World Bank doesn't have authority to simply cancel debts or return payments. These matters require extensive review by our board of directors. You have 24 hours, Traore interrupted, his voice deadly calm. Either you cancel these fraudulent debts and begin the process of returning what you've stolen, or I'll have you arrested and tried for economic war crimes. Morrison shot to his feet, his diplomatic training finally kicking in. Mr. President, I have diplomatic immunity. You cannot threaten a representative of an international financial institution. Traore's smile was predatory. Mr. Morrison, those who commit economic genocide against entire populations cannot claim diplomatic protection. The evidence is overwhelming. Your crimes are documented, and as of this moment, you and your team are prohibited from leaving Burkina Faso until this matter is resolved. The confrontation that would reshape Africa's relationship with international finance had begun. In 24 hours, the world would witness something unprecedented: the arrest of a World Bank director for crimes against an entire continent. The 24 hours that followed Traore's ultimatum transformed Ouagadougou into the epicenter of a continental awakening. Word of the confrontation spread like wildfire through social media, with hashtags supporting the young president trending globally within hours. Africa had been waiting for this moment for decades. As dawn broke over the capital, massive crowds began gathering in Thomas Sankara Square. University students arrived first, carrying banners declaring Africa's wealth for African people. Market vendors closed their stalls to join the demonstration. Civil servants left their offices. Even children skipped school to witness history in the making. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., World Bank headquarters erupted in crisis mode. President A.J. Banga convened an emergency meeting with regional directors, legal advisors, and crisis management specialists. The institution had never faced anything like this before, a direct challenge to their authority backed by documented evidence of systematic fraud. We cannot allow this precedent to be set, Banga declared to his assembled team. If Burkina Faso succeeds, every debtor nation in Africa will follow suit. We're looking at the potential collapse of our entire African portfolio. Back in Ouagadougou, James Morrison spent a sleepless night in his hotel, frantically communicating with Washington while his legal team explored every possible escape route. But Traore had anticipated every move. Airport security had been notified, borders were monitored, and Morrison's diplomatic status had been formally challenged through legal channels. As the deadline approached, support for Traore poured in from across Africa. Mali's President Assimi Goïta was the first to publicly back the Burkinabe leader, declaring that Mali too had been victimized by similar schemes. Niger's Abdul Rahman Chiani went further, calling for a coordinated Sahel response to World Bank exploitation. The courage shown by President Traore should inspire all African leaders, Chiani announced at a press conference in Niamey. For too long, we have allowed international institutions to disguise theft as development assistance. Guinea's President Mamadi Doumbouya echoed these sentiments, while Uganda's veteran leader Yoweri Museveni praised his young colleague with words that resonated across the continent. What Traore has done is what we should have done 50 years ago. It's a belated but absolutely correct step. The international response was swift and predictable. The United States State Department issued a stern warning about respecting international agreements. French President Macron activated diplomatic channels, sending his Africa advisor to Ouagadougou with threats disguised as concerns. The European Union called for moderation, but Traore remained unmoved. "First we solve the World Bank issue," he told the French delegation. "Then we'll settle accounts with you too." As the final hours ticked away, Morrison made one last desperate attempt to escape. Palace intelligence sources revealed that the World Bank director had tried to charter a private flight to leave the country secretly. Special security units intercepted him at the airport, confiscating his passport and escorting him back to face justice. The moment of truth arrived at precisely noon. Morrison was brought back to the presidential palace, his usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. International media had gathered outside, their cameras capturing every moment of this unprecedented confrontation. In the conference room, Traore waited with the patience of a predator who knew his prey was cornered. The young president had spent the night reviewing additional evidence his intelligence services had extracted from Morrison's computers. 10 years of correspondence revealing the systematic corruption of African leaders, assassination lists, and coup planning documents. "Mr. Morrison," Traore began, as the World Bank director was seated under heavy guard, "I trust you've had time to consider my offer. What message do you bring from Washington?" Morrison's voice trembled as he spoke. "I've been in contact with headquarters. They're willing to consider a debt restructuring agreement. A 50% reduction is possible." "I told you yesterday," Traore interrupted. "I don't want restructuring. I want complete cancellation and the return of stolen funds. Nothing less." Morrison's face went ashen. "Mr. President, that's impossible. The World Bank doesn't have authority to simply cancel debts or return decades of payments. The financial implications would be catastrophic." Traore stood slowly, his decision made. "Then you leave me no choice, Mr. Morrison. You are under arrest for economic war crimes against the people of Burkina Faso and conspiracy to commit economic genocide against the African continent." The words that would echo through history had been spoken. At Traore's signal, security forces moved forward with handcuffs. For the first time in the World Bank's 79-year history, one of its senior directors was being arrested for crimes against humanity. "I have diplomatic immunity," Morrison shouted as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "This is illegal. You cannot do this." Traore's response was measured and final. "Those who commit genocide have no immunity, Mr. Morrison. The evidence of your crimes is overwhelming, and justice will be served." As Morrison and his 5-person team were led away in handcuffs, crowds outside the palace erupted in celebration. The images broadcast around the world showed something unprecedented. A World Bank director being perp-walked like a common criminal, while thousands of Africans cheered in the background. The arrest that would change everything had happened. The age of financial colonialism was ending, and a new chapter in African independence was beginning. The images of James Morrison in handcuffs spread across global media within minutes, triggering seismic shocks through the international financial system. CNN International scrambled to characterize Traore as a populist authoritarian, while BBC World Service warned of impending economic disaster. But their narrative control was slipping as African voices dominated social media with messages of unprecedented support. Wall Street responded with immediate panic. World Bank shares plummeted 12% within hours of Morrison's arrest. Every major financial institution with African exposure went on high alert as investors realized the implications. If Burkina Faso's precedent spread, the entire debt-based colonial system could collapse. But in Ouagadougou, the atmosphere was purely celebratory. As Morrison was led to the central prison, 100,000 Burkinabés packed Thomas Sankara Square for Traore's historic address. The young president stood before a sea of African flags and portraits of liberation heroes, preparing to deliver words that would inspire a continental revolution. "Dear brothers and sisters," Traore's voice carried across the square. "Today we declare our true independence. No one will rob us anymore. Our wealth is ours, our gold is ours, our uranium is ours. We will use these resources for the welfare of our people, not to enrich foreign predators." The crowd's response was thunderous. Chants of "Long live independent Burkina Faso" echoed across the capital as traditional drummers and dancers celebrated this moment of triumph. But the real victory was just beginning to unfold across Africa. Within 24 hours of Morrison's arrest, a domino effect began. In Senegal, opposition parties demanded immediate review of all World Bank agreements. Ghanaian university students organized massive protest marches calling for debt cancellation. Ivory Coast activists blockaded World Bank offices in Abidjan. The African Union called an emergency session in Addis Ababa, where 41 of 53 member nations voted to support Traore's actions. A Continental Commission was established to investigate World Bank operations across Africa with a mandate to seek reparations for decades of financial exploitation. International support also materialized from unexpected quarters. In the United States Congress, progressive representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders publicly defended Traore's actions. The World Bank's predatory lending practices have impoverished entire continents. Sanders declared, "President Traore is standing up for economic justice." The BRICS nations moved quickly to offer alternatives. China's Development Bank announced interest-free loans to Burkina Faso, while Russia characterized World Bank activities as neo-colonialism. India's Prime Minister Modi declared support for Africa's rightful struggle, and Brazil's Lula called for joint action against economic imperialism. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro offered discounted petroleum products, while Cuba promised medical personnel and educational support. Iran's foreign minister spoke of an expanding axis of resistance against financial imperialism. But the most significant development came from within Africa itself. Intelligence services across the continent began investigating their own agreements with international financial institutions. The documents Traore's team had uncovered provided a blueprint for identifying similar schemes elsewhere. In Nigeria, leaked documents revealed that oil revenues had been systematically siphoned through complex debt arrangements. Kenya discovered that infrastructure loans had been deliberately structured to create perpetual dependency. Tanzania found evidence of phantom projects identical to those exposed in Burkina Faso. The psychological impact was equally profound. For the first time in decades, Africans watched one of their leaders successfully challenge Western financial institutions without being immediately overthrown or assassinated. The precedent was electrifying. Social media campaigns exploded across the continent. The hashtag #AfricaAwakens became the most trending topic globally, with millions sharing stories of economic exploitation and demanding action from their governments. African youth, who had grown up watching their resources extracted while their countries remained poor, finally had a champion. Western governments scrambled to contain the damage. France activated Operation Barkhane assets to monitor the situation, while the United States increased surveillance of African capitals. The European Union convened crisis meetings as their African partnerships faced unprecedented challenges. But their traditional tools of control were proving ineffective. Attempts to isolate Burkina Faso economically backfired, as other African nations rallied to provide alternative trade relationships. Threats of sanctions were met with promises of continental solidarity. The World Bank itself faced an existential crisis. Morrison's arrest had exposed not just financial crimes, but the institution's fundamental dependence on predatory relationships with vulnerable nations. Internal documents leaked by sympathetic employees revealed the full scope of operations designed to maintain permanent debt dependency. As weeks passed, the revolution continued spreading. Mali announced it was reviewing all foreign debt agreements. Niger began demanding reparations for uranium extracted under colonial contracts. Guinea questioned every mining concession granted to foreign corporations. The psychological chains of financial colonialism were breaking. African leaders who had once feared challenging international institutions now found courage in Traore's example. The continent that had been systematically impoverished for centuries was finally fighting back. In Burkina Faso, Traore's approval ratings soared to unprecedented levels. Streets were named after him. Children sang songs about their liberator president, and international delegations arrived daily, seeking to understand how such a transformation was possible. The young leader who had dared to arrest a World Bank director had ignited something far greater than debt cancellation. He had sparked Africa's second independence movement, one that would reshape global power structures and inspire oppressed peoples worldwide. The revolution was no longer just about Burkina Faso. It was about the fundamental right of nations to control their own destiny and resources. And its pioneer, Ibrahim Traore, had secured his place in history as the leader who finally said enough to 5 centuries of exploitation.
Yeah, welcome back, my beautiful people from wherever you are watching. This is your Kenyan Explorer, your presenter, and this is how it started. Before we start to talk about what is happening in Burkina Faso or what happened immediately after the coup d'etat, and what action that Ibrahim Traore took so that he can put his country on the track, so that he can do what he was his plans and what he was best to do with his country. He has to take the tough decisions. He has to take the tough decisions, and maybe what looked like a threat in the eyes of the oppressors, because after his decision, as per the speech, as per the video that I played, all that came out of the people who are concerned, like United States, France, and all those countries, was just a warning, a stern warning that you cannot threaten the international unions or organizations. So, they found that whoever they are dealing with or whoever they are trying to threaten is someone who has decided to come and stick with his words. So he was not ready to bother or to take questions on what they are speaking or what they are trying to bring out as warnings. But he has his own plan, and he was best to work towards his plans. So after this incident, this is what we call unprecedented incident or action, because what happened or what Ibrahim Traore tried to do is something that all the African leaders are afraid, and they cannot do it. Before this guy came out and take out this hard action, no African leader was ready or was able to do this. It's not that they don't know what was happening. Many of them, and a lot of them, they know what is really happening, because when we as African leaders, we as Africans, we have our leaders, and these leaders, most of them, they are based on the IMF loans, they are based on the World Bank loans. And you know why we as countries or African countries, we are owing a large amount of loans in World Bank and in IMF loans. But why are they still giving us and giving? It's not that they like giving their money out, no, but it's that they know very well that this is the only way, this is the only a shelter or weapon they are using to take down Africa. This is the only way they are using to capture Africa, because they believe and they know well that if we as African countries, we are owing them loans, and this amount of loans, then they have every reason to do anything they want to do in Africa. They have every reason to come and dictate us. They have every reason to come and introduce more and more policies, and as they want us to work or submit to them. So they cannot allow this to happen, because that's why they came out as a threatening Ibrahim Traore for trying to challenge the international organization. But you know what? Because Ibrahim Traore came up and he had his plan, and he really know and understand which people he was dealing with. So before he tried, he went out to tackle them, or he went out to do whatever he did. he don't just wake up and decide that he want to do this or whatever he did, but he had plan, and he know very well the people he's going to deal with or challenge, they are not easy people. So whoever was coming, he was ready to face it because he was already packaged himself. And after this action, that's when we saw African countries, Nigeria, Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, South Africa, Ivory Coast, they all came out demanding that they want to do all the audits with the loans that they are owing the IMF and the World Bank. They want everything to follow all the debts that they have, and they want to reach in every stream to know how claiming their country or their accounts. And because we are owing a large number of loans, but you know what, this money are not helping any common citizen, because we have presented the roads, we have presented hospitals, we have presented schools, that this money are coming to do developments in our countries. But you know what, these things are just only presented on the papers, but when you go on the ground physically, there's nothing going on in our countries. There is nothing that is going on whereby you can say that this is what we have to trace, this is how our money were being used, this is what we are paying, these are the debts that we are paying. So this is what this money did. That's the problem. That's the great problem. If this money, they could have taken this money, and this money they are putting on a good use, so that even if a common citizen comes out to pay this debt, they pay knowing that this is what we really we have, and this is what we get from the loan that we are paying. That is something good. That is something that is already understandable. But all this money that is being taken, and they are just going in a group of people, and yet the common citizen are the one who are coming out to pay. So we need a leader like Ibrahim Traore. That's why when we come out every day and speak about Ibrahim Traore, saying what Ibrahim Traore is doing in Burkina Faso, some people maybe think that we're just speaking about Ibrahim Traore because of the love that his people or Burkinabas are giving Ibrahim Traore. No. But this just a one icon who awaken all the African leaders, because all that is happening, all the rebellions that we are seeing in Africa today, this was never before. It was not there before. Before Ibrahim Traore, no coup d'etat was there. No demonstration against the imperialists were there. This is the guy who has come and introduced all that we are seeing towards Africa. Africa is now demanding its right, its freedom, just because of the one man, Ibrahim Traore. And that's why Yoweri Museveni of Uganda said it is very shameful to see all 53 leaders of Africa are just there waiting for one guy to come and help them. This is not good. So the action that Ibrahim Traore take, my guy, this is where the story of Ibrahim Traore started. And after this action, that's when the Africans came to realize who Ibrahim Traore is and what was his intention when he came to overthrow the government of Burkina Faso, because this government was there, but also it was doing nothing to its citizens. So I really thank Ibrahim Traore for coming up and awakening Africans, because what he did is not only a benefit for the Burkinabes, for the entire African continent. At least this time, all the Africans are speaking one voice: Free Africa, #Free Africa. And Free Africa has only come because of Ibrahim Traore, because this is the one guy who has advocated this, and we thank. And that's why we say that we will not stop loving and speaking about Ibrahim Traore, because he has awakened the sleeping minds of Africans. He has awakened and he has did something that we never expected, that an African leader will come to do it after the assassination of the people that Africans trusted in, after the assassination of Thomas Sankara, after this assassination of Patrice Lumumba. These were the only cities African leaders which Africans believed that they are going to take Africa from the bondage that they have been holding for over 40 or 400 years. So here we come. This is a new journey. That we as Africans, we have started, and we believe in this. Through this, we see hope in Africa. Through this, we see the new dreams of Africa being achieved. Through this, we see the future generation and future generation of Africa, because we need the best Africa. And that's what we are praying, and we are speaking, we are advocating. That's why we are preaching a positivity towards Africa each and every day. I think that you have enjoyed the video, you have enjoyed the speech, because what Ibrahim Traore is trying to do, this is something that we pray that it has to be exposed by all the medias, all the mainstream medias, so that they know what really is happening in Africa. They were only using to expose only the negative things, so that the world could see Africa as a bad place, as a dumping site, as it was believed. But what's really happening today in Africa is something different that we have to appreciate, and we have to support it 100%. So I will not take much of your time, because what the video that I played to you, I believe that is something that is of much use and much important to you, and I believe that through this we are going to change something somewhere else. This is your presenter, Kenyan Explorer. If this is your first time to pass by this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel, so that we can move together, we can build this channel together, we can build a home, a community, a black community, so that when we talk about African issues, we speak something that at least we need. Each and every African must be hit by it, and through this we are going to grow Africa as a continent of our wish. So I appreciate all the returning subscribers for your love you are showing, because without you I'm doing nothing, without you I'm going nowhere, but because of your support and your love, that's why I am who I am today, and that's why I am glowing and giving out each and every day, because you show that you need more, and I am here to give you more. This kind of, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your time. Until next time, until next episode, as we do the same concerning Africa, because we need the best Africa. Thank you for your time, and be blessed.